Hello, my friend. My name is Coach Quiggy. I'm a self-love coach and a mindfulness teacher. And if you're here with me today, you must be going through a breakup or divorce that's really been ass-kicking. And what I want to teach you and guide you to in this video is how to do an appropriate post-mortem on your relationship so that you can learn the lessons that you need to learn, take responsibility for what you can and get to take responsibility for, and not make the same mistakes in the future so that you can set yourself up for future success, healthy relationships romantically, but also healthy relationships in the workplace, with friends, but most importantly, the healthy relationship with yourself is going to be the one that's going to make the difference in the long run. And we have this beautiful opportunity in the context of a breakup where shit has hit the fan and it hasn't worked, and we get to look back and we get to fail forward and upward. You get to look and ask yourself, what happened here? And how can I make different decisions in the future? And this is absolutely essential as a part of the process of letting go. If you're really hung up on an ex and you're like, fuck, like it could have been and it should have been, and why wasn't it? And they're the one and I must be a failure. Take a deep breath. This is going to be hard to do, and it's going to make your life so much easier and more fulfilling in the future. If you can start to suss out the ways in which your failed relationship was really not all that fucking great, by noticing what you settled for, by getting to know the ways in which you contributed to toxic or codependent dysfunctional cycles. And the third piece is that we're going to learn new love stories and new ways to approach relationships in the future. So these are the three things that we're going to focus on when we do our postmortem. Is one, what are the qualities? So let's go right into it. What are the qualities of this partner that I'm walking away from, or maybe you've been broken up with and you feel the pain of rejection, and we're having to grieve through that and move through that, but we can still look back and start to, in the space from the partner that we've been with for however long that you were with them, now you have some space to look at them a little bit more objectively and start to notice the qualities that really maybe didn't work for you and what you want and need in a partner. Of course, you can appreciate, and you should appreciate and be grateful for the qualities that really did float your boat and did make you feel seen, heard, loved, valued, and lit up as a partner. Absolutely essential. And the first part of your postmortem is to pay attention to the reality of the person that you were with. Because a lot of times our mind, especially as we're detaching, will really convince us that they're up on this pedestal and that they just can't be fucking beat. And we get really stuck. You may feel really stuck in sensing that, like, that was the one. How could it get any better? I'm afraid I'll be alone. I'll never meet anybody as good. And as we're spending time reflecting, we ask ourselves, okay, where are the flaws? And this is not coming from a judgmental place. This is coming from an effort to discern better for yourself in the future how to choose a romantic partner. So we are going to look to the things that really didn't work for us in the other person and be honest about them. If you recognize that, honest communication was not something that you really got in the relationship consistently, you get to recognize in your reflection that that's something that's really important to you and was missing. And of course, we make excuses, and this is why the space of the breakup is so valuable, because we can start to see things a little bit more clearly rather than that attachment brain, which is really making excuses and accepting treatment that, when we back up and look at things from a more self-loving, self-respecting point of view, which I'm inviting you to check in with here, we realize that shit just doesn't and shouldn't fucking fly for what I deserve and what my standard is. And so we look and we recognize, okay, communication is something that I wasn't really getting in the relationship. That's just the person, that's just where they are. And we want to neutralize the judgment, because it's of no use to us to point the finger and being like, well, they're not this, because we want to change people, right? We want to change our ex. We're like, why couldn't they be this way? Well, they weren't, and they aren't. Where you get your power back is to recognize, okay, that's something that I really need in a relationship. And when I didn't have it, it really hurt. And here's how it played out for me. And this is how it tends to play out. We miss out on the things that we really want and need. And consciously, there is a part of us that recognizes this, or more so unconsciously, this part of us recognizes that we're missing out on this, and we build up resentment. Okay, so let's say communication is the example here. You weren't getting the kind of communication you wanted and needed. You accepted it. Okay, this person's not really communicating, but it's yes, go on. We fight. And then underlying all this is a sense of incongruency and resentment that builds up in your system, because part of you knows that you want and need good communication, and yet you are accepting, maybe passively, you are choosing to stay engaged with a partner who does not meet your standards for communication. So when we back up and we learn, and we can come from this place from discernment, and we can recognize, wow, okay, I really need that in a partner. Boom, you are now empowered to make a better choice in the future based on your reflections of this past relationship. And it's going to set you up for success when you make choices. Not only do you know, now you have the information, you have the reference point, and now in the future, you need to make sure that you make a choice of romantic partners that satisfy the standards for communication, for play, for depth, for value alignment. These are the things that we get to pay attention to and notice and recognize so we can make better decisions in the future. The second piece of this is really taking radical self-fucking responsibility for the ways in which you contributed to dysfunction in your relationship. So this is really doing a deep dive on the patterns. You know, there's a lot of wounding that we bring into relationships. Relationships are kind of the playground, the battleground for our primary wounding, because we as children grow up with what should be a healthy attachment to our parents, and many of us aren't really given the love that a child needs and deserves. And so we go on into our romantic relationships, projecting our mother and our father onto our romantic partners, and continuing to feel the dysfunction and the lack of the safety, security, validation, communication, consistency that we really wanted and needed from our parents, and that we want from a partner. And we play out all our coping mechanisms and our ways that we've learned to try to get that. And while it's beautiful to desire and want that consistency on the receiving end from a partner, really we have to check ourselves in the ways that we get in the way. Again, there's kind of this sly, our coping mechanisms are designed to get safety, but often they push safety further away because it causes more codependency and conflict and dysregulation. The things that we're trying to avoid, we're actually creating more of because of the inefficiency of these coping mechanisms, of these patterns that we find ourselves playing out in relationship after relationship. And the beauty in this post-mortem is to recognize, wow, okay, that's how I'm causing dysfunction in my relationships. That's how I contributed to the failure of this past relationship. And that's hard. That's hard to acknowledge. That's a hard pill to swallow. And there's going to be some grief there. And if you are feeling like grief is desiring to be felt, you can watch my other video on how to feel your feelings in a breakup. Check out the rain meditation to be able to do that. Because there's going to be some grief when you realize, oh, fuck, here's how I contributed to it. And the deeper layer is, here's why, because I really just want to be held. I really want to be held, and so I lash out and I cling and I try to control in an effort to try to be held, and there's this really beautiful desire, and yet the pattern that I've been playing out, relationship over relationship, actually pushes my partner away and makes it harder for them to want to hold me. Okay, tough pill to swallow. There might be some grief there. There might be some frustration. And this is the powerful place from which you can move forward and make new choices. Recognizing, acknowledging the stories and the patterns that you play out and how they actually sabotage the healthy type of relationship that you want and need and desire. So there's self-accountability is essential. And this is not in a blaming way, but this is in an empowering way. I realize that this is what I'm unconsciously, to no shame or no fault of myself, but because of my wiring and my conditioning, this is how I'm unconsciously playing out my role in romantic relationships, and this is why it's not working. This is what it's really doing. We see that objectively, boom, we now have more space to manage that pattern when it wants to come up in future relationships. And now we move into point 3, which is to learn new ways of relating romantically that are actually healthy. This is where we need to parse out sort of the Disney myth of romance, that it's this high, I'm finally feeling completed and happy and healthy and whole because I've met you kind of illusion and myth. And that's just not the reality of relationships. And so we've been conditioned, not just by our upbringing and, the wounding that we may have experienced in our family, our primary family system, but we're also going to be bringing in stories and conditioning from culture. And so, this is one example where we've really been programmed to think that things have to be fluffy and fucking awesome all the time. And anytime they're not, which guess what? Healthy relationships, even the healthiest relationships, have hard moments. They have conflict. It's part of being a human being. But if we're programmed to do the expectation that it's got to be all roses, butterflies, unicorns, and flowers all the time, when it's not, when the road gets bumpy, maybe your pattern is to jump ship. And so as we learn to understand a more mature way of relating, we can then start to apply and practice ways of showing up as a partner and choosing partners and engaging with our future partners that are actually going to support interdependency. So a lot of what we're moving away from is codependency, where it's my safety, significance, health, well-being, happiness, completeness is dependent on you. We put all our eggs in one fucking basket, and we wonder why it hurts so much when we go through a breakup, because the basket is obliterated and all our eggs are blown the fuck up, and we are left picking up the pieces and trying to figure out, okay, how do I fix this? How do I change this? And this is a part of the journey, and I have so much love and compassion for how difficult that is. I've been there. There are still those patterns within me, and from moment to moment, day to day, relationship to relationship, we still get poked to these wounds of wanting to find and get and fill that void in someone else, and yet it's unsustainable. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. And so what we want to move to is interdependency, which is dependent on the fact that you become whole in yourself. You become the faucet of your satisfaction in life, of your fulfillment, of your love. You start to become one who can nourish yourself and make healthy, empowered, integrous choices for yourself in your life, regardless of what your relationship status is. The more that you build self-respect, the more that you build capacity and self-trust and resiliency as an individual, the more whole you can show up into a relationship that becomes interdependent. The greatest analogy you can think of is that we think of traditionally a relationship as 50-50. And think about that. If you're 50-50 and then one day someone's at 30% or 20%, now you've got a total of 70 or 80% out of 100 to work with. Okay, there's a lot less room for the day-to-day fluctuations and hardships of being a human. We're already at a disadvantage, and we're looking for the other person to complete the other 50% that we're, not completing ourselves. And at the same time, they're trying to complete their 50%. So there's this unmanageable, unworkable bargain that's happening in codependency, where we're looking for something in someone else that they cannot give to themselves, let alone give to you. Interdependency is 100 and 100. It's 200s coming together, or as close to as possible. You don't have to be perfect. You can be 80, 90, whatever. It doesn't fucking matter. 110, let's go. Coming together, two whole human beings working together to build something coherent from places of an equilibrium of wholeness. And what that means is that when you're at 100%, and again, this doesn't mean every day, when you're at 100% and then your partner is at a 40 because they're really fucking sick, you look at all that room to move and support them. This is why a lot of relationships fail, because 250s go through hard times, stressful times, and all of a sudden they're both at 20. There's just there's nowhere to lean. If you cannot lean on yourself and create wholeness and resiliency with yourself. And this is not to say that we need to be isolated or entirely self-dependent. This is, again, interdependence is I'm an equal part of the whole. I'm a part of the team. I'm a full part of we. So when we show up having, really done the honest work to pay attention to the ways in which we contribute to dysfunction, which, over time takes two people at 50 down to 40, down to 30, down to 20. Everybody's just fucking worn down, right? You probably feel like you got to a point where you're like, I'm just so exhausted. We can't do this anymore. That's the problem. When you have two people coming at 100, you have so much more room to work with hardships and navigate challenges. Again, not with the fucking Disney, illusion of like, it's always going to be good. Like, things are going to be hard, but we know how to meet them, and we know how to meet them on the individual level, but also as a team. So this part 3 also requires a lot of research, going into, it's been incredibly insightful for me to have in my social media feed and in my ears, the podcast of the best experts in healthy, mature relating that there are out in this day and age. Esther Perel, John Wineland, Jillian Turecki, Mark Groves of Create the Love. These are some names that can really help teach you how to relate in a healthy way. Of course, I've got ideas that I'm sharing with you here that you can start to apply and pay attention to. The 3 qualities here, the 3 practices here to really learn from our relationship in an effort to let go of it, but also to move towards something more powerful, more potent, more purposeful, more easy and full and satisfying and healthy and whole. Number 1, noticing what we settled for, what we chose, and figuring out how to make better choices in the partners that we choose in the future. Taking stock of and responsibility for the patterns that we have played out and owning them with love, with compassion, and figuring out new ways of approaching the needs underneath those patterns. For example, if you want to be held and you feel like controlling is, maybe you just learn to ask, like, hey, it's really important for me to be held. Would you hold me on Monday evenings? It's a beautiful nonviolent communication-based request to meet that need of being held without doing the over controlling that your inner child learned to do. So we learn from our patterns, and we choose to apply new strategies moving forward. And finally, 3 is like really learning and getting to understand, what is healthy love? What does healthy love look like? So many of us are coming from no fucking clue of how to be in a healthy romantic relationship. We didn't get great role models. We didn't get great examples in media and TV and movies. And so we're just fuddling around in the dark, making mistakes, failing. And here's the invitation and some of the practices and ways in which you can learn and fail upward, so that your next relationship, the relationship with yourself, is gonna be fucking magical and amazing and beautiful and deep. And then the next romantic relationship that you get in is gonna be so much more healthy because you're showing up more full. I hope that this was helpful. If you dig what I'm laying down here, please subscribe to my channel. And if you are in the midst of this breakup and really feeling like you want some deepening support, I have a free masterclass coming up called the Breakup Wake Up. It's on March 1st, the morning of. You can sign up for it in the description below here, learn all about it. I'm gonna guide you through the 6 key pillars to transforming your breakup or divorce, your heartbreak, into the best thing that ever happened for you, not just to you. You are not a victim. Again, all of this reflects the self-responsibility that really is going to transform you spiritually, emotionally into the most powerful, lit the fuck up, authentic you that you can be. I want you to fall deeply, madly in love with yourself. That's what I'm gonna show you how to do in this masterclass. And if you really wanna go in deep and change your fucking life, there's a group coaching program on the other side of that of the same name. I love you. Have such a beautiful now. I commend you for your courage to really show up to this at times difficult work. It really does require bravery to look at yourself honestly, lovingly, and say, hey, where did I make mistakes and how can I correct them in the future? But that's the pathway to the best future that you could possibly have, and I want that for you. So hats off to you for showing up. Much love, and be well.